history is littered with the corpses of people who had stuff worth stealing. Animals. Water. Shiny things. Fertile land. Spices.
Nutmeg slice. Tea?
But when it came to stuff worth pinching, one continent had it all. Ivory, copper, cotton, rubber, wood, tin, gold, diamonds, and people. As cheap energy, slaves were unbeatable until a less troublesome energy source was discovered and a new era began. Human numbers increased 5 times over, and with each person wanting more and more stuff, oil became the resource worth fighting for all around the world.
Oil was formed when ancient plant life in the oceans absorbed energy from the ancient sun. As these plants died, they settled on the ocean floor, along with the dead bodies of tons and tons of ocean creatures. Over the millennia, temperatures increased, and the organic matter was gradually cooked until the sun's energy was stored inside oil. 150 million years later, Shell's geologists analyze where the oil might be, then drill 3 miles down into the seabed to collect samples.
We get the samples and analyze them for the fossil contents, the microscopic fossils. And it's just another geoscientific tool in order to improve your possibility of finding oil. In my opinion, probably arrogantly so, but it's pretty high calling actually to try to do that, to try to figure out or maybe take apart time itself.
Go back a few thousand years, and the energy available to grow our crops or feed animals was limited by the daily sunlight falling on the earth. But now we use the energy equivalent to hundreds of years of sunlight every single year. Every part of modern life is now literally made of oil, from CDs and plastic bags to medicine and computers, from clothes and carpets to cosmetics and cell phones. It's truly a wonderful and necessary substance. Then there's our food. Each calorie we eat uses nearly 100 oil calories to produce, package, refrigerate, transport. And fossil fuel-produced fertilizers now feed a couple billion or so people who could not otherwise be sustained. It would be prudent for humanity to carefully use the remaining oil to build a new society run without it. Instead, we're burning up tens of millions of barrels every day, so it will be gone. It will run out, leaving pretty much none for future generations, even though we in the oil industry are working our asses off looking for and finding this magical substance.
Yeah, Rick. All right, push it back!
And then you see it, and you smell it, and, it's greasy and, ugly and smells so much like money. It's just beautiful,
13 billion pounds in 2005. That's £1.5 million an hour, 400 pounds a second.
And a hefty chunk of those profits came from here, Nigeria, where most of the population lives on less than $1 a day.
This is the water we drink. There's a lot of frog inside, toads, any germs you can find inside here. With the help of a microscope, you can see the disease we have inside. And we thought that if we introduce Shell into this community, that will change all this water, but it still remains the same. These are health sensors.
22-year-old Layefa Malin has an ambition to train as a doctor and then work in her home village, Kokojabane, where Shell started building this medical center.
So it has been like this for 3 years now. But we are still pleading that they should come and finish it.
Like hundreds of other community projects across the Niger Delta, construction has been abandoned. Shell maintains that's because of the risk of kidnapping. 13% of the oil revenue is supposed to be spent on community development, but the local people's share is almost all lost to the corrupt political system. So despite being in the most profitable oil region in West Africa, Layefa's village has no health service, no secondary school, no electricity, and no drinking water.
I think in 2004, a lot of people died. A lot. I think it's up to 20 persons. Children mostly. Even my mother's child, that's my sister, she even died of cholera. I think the death of my sister motivated me a lot to become a good medical doctor, not just a doctor, a good one.
The water is what gave me the typhoid fever.
You know, it took a lot of money to become a medical student. I need to pay for my accommodation and other things. And I'm going to put on nice clothes. That means I will start the fishing from this year to maybe 4 years' time.
Put your paddle that way.
This way.
Then, yes, like, no.
The fishing is not good because of the oil spill. They're killing most of the fish. And we don't even have big fish again, just small ones. Oh yeah, what bag would I Can it dip out? Sometimes the oil will be all over the fish. So you have to wash the fish, maybe with Omo. They talk in the news that we have produced 1,000 or 1 million barrels of oil today. But instead of we being rich, we are getting more poor.
Layefa is describing a phenomenon known as the resource curse. Paradoxically, finding oil usually increases a country's poverty, as the oil wealth is concentrated in the hands of a few, so the agriculture, education, and health system of the country become neglected and often collapse. The local people's health problems are compounded by gas flares burning night and day throughout the Niger Delta. Asthma, bronchitis, skin diseases, and cancer have all been linked. The gas is found alongside oil, but as it's dangerous to transport, it can't easily be sold to overseas markets. It could be used for cooking and heating within Nigeria, but building the infrastructure is expensive, so the oil companies just burn it off. The flares emit about 70 million tons of carbon dioxide every year, more than the annual emissions from 10 million British homes.
Because they have money and they have strong companies, they just do whatever they like.
Why are American cities designed so it's almost impossible not to have a car? Why were 100 railways in cities like New York, Philadelphia, and Los Angeles bought up and then deliberately destroyed? Why did the electric car get scrapped? Why were we, along with Australia, the only two countries not to sign the original Kyoto Climate Treaty? Why was an oil company lobbyist allowed to change official government reports on global warming? Why was the same PR firm employed by the tobacco industry to persuade the public that smoking is healthy, then employed by the oil industry to convince us there was still doubt about climate change? Alternative energy has been available for 50 years. Why have we barely used it? Why were solar panels taken off the White House? Because, right from the early days of the industry, the oil men and their obscene profits have had an unhealthy influence on the people running our country. And now, they are the people running our country. And they're providing the cash, too. Oil business isn't just in bed with the government, it is the government.
skiing in the desert, heating the air, lighting empty offices. Energy is so ridiculously cheap, it makes perfect economic sense to just piss it away. China is the new bad guy, because they are building a new power station every 4 days. But a quarter of that energy makes stuff for us. Western companies pay Chinese workers crap wages to make crap plastic toys, then ship them to Europe and wrap them in more plastic. Punters drive to the out-of-town megastore in their gas guzzlers. Plastic toy in plastic box goes into plastic bag. 2 days later, toy is broken and back it goes to a Chinese landfill where it stays for about 50,000 years.
Water from the bottle's much better than the tap. Oh, water from the bottle's much better than the tap. Health giving, life enhancing, mountain spring spa.
800 times more energy wasted and 10,000 times more expensive for you. It's a tricky decision.
Lots of ideas have tried to take over the world, but there's only one winner. 3,000 adverts bombard us every day, telling us we'll be happier, more attractive and with better skin if only we buy their products. Together, they create within us an insatiable desire to buy more and more stuff. Americans have been advertised at longest, and they now each consume twice as much energy as a European, 9 times more than a Chinese person, 15 times more than an Indian, and 50 times more than someone from Kenya. If all 6.5 billion people here on Earth consume like Europeans or Japanese, we'd need 2 more planets worth of resources. If everyone consumed like Americans, Australians and Canadians, we'd need another 4. And in 2040 or so, when there's about 9 billion of us, we'll need 2 more again. Capitalism's only goal is ever-expanding growth, but ever-expanding growth on just the one not expanding planet is impossible. The current economic system is disastrous, not just for the planet, but for most people too. 400 years of capitalism has allowed the richest 1% to take 40% for themselves, leaving just 1% for the poorest half. But anyone wanting to live differently, to travel by train or generate their own power, is thwarted at every turn. With profit the only measuring stick, destroying the planet is written into the system, and runaway climate change is a not very surprising result.
Climate scientists can estimate how much of the remaining fossil fuels we can safely burn. This amount is called the global cap. Under this proposal, the world's governments would make a binding international agreement detailing how to distribute the global cap. The earlier the start date, the greater the chance of not triggering runaway climate change. The total global emissions for the first year, say 2012, will be set at their current level. Every year following they'd shrink until, by about 2065, they're almost zero. Initially, each country would be allocated an emissions quota according to how much they currently consume. But this would change over time. America would slash its emissions 90% from its current over-consuming position. Europe too would decrease massively, as would China. But India and Africa would increase until, by about 2025, each human being on the planet would have equal rights to the Earth's resources. Equity is the only option morally, and also practically, as developing countries won't sign up to anything less. The total emissions would then keep decreasing every year, until by 2065 we'll have weaned ourselves off fossil fuels and prevented the worst impacts of climate change. As to how each country divvies up its share to its citizens, there are various options on the table, the most promising of which is individual carbon rationing.
Mr. W.S. Morrison is here to explain.
If, in the course of the war, we are short for a time of this or that article of food, rationing will give everyone, rich and poor alike, an equal share of all that's going.